And let me just go ahead and put you at ease. You know, we had a great lunch. Was that great or what? That brisket caused me to go back into the line and get a clean plate and get seconds. So if you get sleepy, don't worry about it. Move to where there's an empty seat beside you and just go ahead and lay over, stretch out. It won't bother me. It never has. If it bothered me, somebody says, "I'll tell you, you're pretty dynamic. I bet nobody ever goes to sleep under you." I bet they do. But I always tell them that it was the music, you know, to put them to sleep. Isn't that bad? They're thinking now, I'm glad I'm not this guy's minister of music. And that's how Scott feels after 21 years. But anyway, thank you. Hey, you know, I love coming here. This is, you know, me kind of bragging to get invited back. But anyway, no, but I really do, and I have for a long time, kind of disconnected at one time for no obvious reason. I mean, it was just going through transitions and stuff, and so we were not on the radar. For whatever reason, that's fine. So that's not a complaint. It's just, it was. So in the early days, we came, and I remember standing here and preaching one time, and I closed my Bible and laid aside my notes, and I said, they say you can't have two thoughts at one time. Well, I think I do, and I may be schizophrenic, but I do. I think I can be preaching and thinking something. I've done it time and time again. And sometimes when I'm preaching, I forget what I was going to say. It's somebody says, "What do you do in those awkward moments?" Preach till you remember. Yeah. So you do. But I was standing here and I was preaching and I closed my Bible notes and I said, you know, I may finish that message some other time, but I believe God is speaking to me. I believe He wants me to be involved up here. And so we put on this big Christmas celebration, you remember, and I brought up musicians and teams, and we came up, and I asked the church to join me, and we bought every pastor a suit, and there you go, right there, okay. And I think we got y'all shoes, didn't we, too? Yeah. Shirt, and then we gave all the women $100 gift cards, and then things for the children, and then we asked what they needed. And at that time, you needed some refrigeration for food. And so we not only bought refrigeration, but then I went over to Publix and had a top man in the Southeast. And he filled a Publix truck up and drove it up here and filled that up. And you needed a playground, and we did it. And so anyway, it was just a joy to do it. And then, you know, we just stayed in touch at whatever level we could. And then so we're glad that Dr. Haggard has sort of, re-engaged us and given us a chance to be here. And we're in a lot of places, and a lot of churches are, choose to be in a lot of places when you've been doing what you do in a large denomination for a lot of years. You just have a lot of connections, and you love what so many people do, and you try to be as involved as you possibly can. Someone told me one time, said, you're always talking about touching poverty, said, you'll never eliminate it. And the reason I know that is Jesus said you'll have the poor with you always. And if He said it, and then you may even say this, why would He say that? Because He could eliminate about anything. And it could be that He left them here to test what we would do with what He gave us. It's just, my thoughts. And by the way, you can see what our research done the other day. It was really interesting research that I did and taught our people. But I was dealing with what does the average evangelical Christian give. And right now, if just the evangelical, and sorry, that doesn't include the Catholics, if the evangelical church, those of us believe us can share in the gospel, if we would all tithe, we would have an additional $165 billion a year given to the cause of Christ. And in 5 years, we could eliminate all poverty. And in 5 years, we could eliminate every problem with water source in the world. Anyway, when we were through doing everything we needed to do, we would have an additional $80 million. So it's just there. It's just interesting. Per capita giving in the United States is stronger in Mississippi than any other state in the Union, and that's the poorest state. Why does God let us know all that stuff? The more a person makes, the less they give. The lowest income people in America give 3.5% of their income to the kingdom, and the wealthiest part of the church in America gives 1.6%. Isn't I don't know why I threw that in. Never who that was for. Hope you enjoy it. And So anyway, but it's good. So we do enjoy coming and being able to give back a little bit. So all right, let's move. Here we go. Number 4, apathy tends to increase with age. This is really simple stuff. Apathy tends to increase with age. I'm 65 years old, and there's a tendency as I get older to allow the passion to ebb out of my life, and that can be true of your ministry and marriage. So it means you've got to be proactive, right? I'm kind of big on word studies. The word that we've used, and sometimes it's different during a season in life or for a life. I've got a medical doctor in my church. She's female. She's an internal medicine, very godly lady, missionary heart. And then, so her husband is the stay-at-home dad. He does all the cooking and cleaning. They're a great couple of change. But we think, regardless of who you want to put there, male definitely would be dominant in that we are the providers. So that means we work in the context of provision. Have you ever thought about studying that word, provision? Latin word, and it speaks of being pro with the vision. That's why people get married. Provision. I'd like to marry you, and I hope the day comes we can buy us a little house. And I know about you. I'd like to hear what you're thinking, but I'd like for us to have 3 children. And you know what you're doing. You're being pro with a vision, and that person buys in and says, boy, we think this is going to be a really good marriage, and you do life together. And then somewhere in there, you let that provision become anything but pro. And then the marriage becomes pretty hollow, and then the rest of the story. So anyway, provision. All right, J.C. Ryle said, listen to this. I love this. If you only have one talent, don't bury it in the ground. Try to live as to be missed. There are far more to be done in 12 hours than most people have ever done in their life. It may be true that wise young leaders are very rare, but it's no less true that zealous old believers are very rare. Never allow yourself to believe you can do too much. For one man who does too much, I will show you 1,000 that don't do enough. Lay to heart the words of the nobleman that said, when told that he ought to rest a while, what should we rest for? We'll have all eternity to rest in. Now, I have balance in my life. I was talking last night about boundaries, talking about not wanting to lead on empty. Different things I've read, try to keep myself there. I have margins. I really do have margins. I work hard, but I play hard. I really do. So I've always got, when I'm really, really working, I can tell you that there, normally about 6 weeks, there's going to be a few days off somewhere to kind of refuel. So, but a lot of times people think they're just doing too much. If you're not careful, you start hanging around with carnal people that tell you to slow down. And really, if you slow down much more, you'll be in reverse. So we can press on. And by the way, I've got men that work in insurance that'll get out there and just give it a real day's work. Well, what's wrong with the preacher of the gospel of Jesus Christ? Man, let's get after it. All right, so number 5, the reason people lack passion is they have no purpose beyond themselves. People who live for themselves are in a mighty small business. So no passion beyond yourself. I mean, I got a passion for a lot of things. Gallup poll, this is interesting, Gallup poll said the number 1 factor for credibility in the church is the passion of the pastor. Wow, isn't that something, how we're observed from outside, that Gallup poll would say that? So let me define passion again. It's the energy of the soul, the immaterial part of me. I'm often asked, where do you get your energy and how do you stay motivated? I have actually written 2 major lessons on time management from a busy pastor's perspective. I have written and taught on preaching from a busy pastor's perspective. You know, sometimes our people say to me, and I'm grateful, you may not feel that way, and it's all right, but they may say to me, you know, you are always so very well prepared. You normally can't hardly get through all your material. Maybe that's less prepared as I should be. But they'll say, but you really got a lot to say as parents. You've really done your homework. And so they know I'm not neglecting one for the other. I mean, it's a big deal for me to be a good husband, good dad, and a good grandfather. father. When my first grandchild came along, I heard rumor. If you listen, I would eavesdrop. I'd hear somebody say, well, that grandchild will never know his granddaddy, and that ticked me off. Greek word again. So I decided that's not going to be true. So you know what I would do? Let me just tell you what you do. You can be very proactive. My kids that lived not far from me, Deanna and Jake, and so I would go down once Katie was born, and I would turn their coat off in the morning and throw that formula in the microwave oven and go get Katie out of bed and feed her just about every morning. And when she was 3 weeks old, I was saying to her, say Papa. And the first word she ever spoke was Papa. Now, she's 19 years old. If you're ever at Woodstock, you can observe this at 11 o'clock service. I said, don't you ever approach me unless you have puckered lips. So when she's a little girl, it's cute. She'd come walking down there and she would reach down and she'd give me a kiss on the lips. Now she comes down and she's going to get married next year when she's 20 years old, and that boy is following her, and she still walks up to me and gives me a kiss. And he said to me one day, well, Katie loves me, Pastor Johnny, but not as much as she loves you. And I said, I'm glad you're getting it right, son. But anyway, I'm really big on family. I really am. Date my wife every week. I mean a date. Okay. And if sometimes we go out twice, I ask her, is this a date too? And she says, yes. And I write it down in my day timer and check it off on it. I want to get credit for it. All right. So a passionate person. How do you stay passionate? So listen to these statements. A passionate person is goal-oriented. They're visionary. I mean, I'm on purpose. Did you know the number one selling nonfiction book in the world? Tell me. Purpose-Driven Life. Purpose-Driven Life. No books outsold Rick Warren's book. First year sold 26 million copies. Did you know that 90% of the books that will be written in America this year will not produce enough income to pay for the investment? 90%. That's why when you hear of a Max Lucado, which has sold 100 million books, wow. When you hear of them, the reason their name stands out is because there's so few that do that on that list. But people want to know the purpose, why they're here. So they live a goal-oriented, missionary life. He always says that this life is just a dress rehearsal for the life to come. All right, listen to this. If I'm going to be passionate, especially as a preacher, I got to be a self-starter. I don't clock in, clock out. They don't know what I'm doing at home. I could just be laying around watching TV or whatever. Or am I actually up early studying the Word of God, exercising, walking through my day, praying, coming up with a plan? Number 3, has a positive, optimistic attitude. I tell our people, so I say this from my pulpit, you may invite me to lunch, and if I go out and you're negative and you just talk down on everything, it will be a cold day in Haiti before I ever go to lunch with you again. So when you call my office and she says I'm not available, don't feel bad. I won't be. And I just move on. I mean, I'm just not going to spend my life with negative people. I mean, it's not good. And so I'm a positive, optimistic person. I just don't always see it half full. And so, I'm a realist, okay? I'm a realist, but I'm just telling you, there's some people that everything is negative. They can tell you what they don't like about everything, and I'm going to let them tell somebody else. And they're the ones that always say this. Yeah, I don't know what it is about our church, because a lot of people come to me with things they don't like. I've even come up with a thought for that. I know why. You have trash can ears. Okay, yeah. So they won't tell me that anymore, right? All right, I can tell all that went over real big. All right. You want to give 100% all the time. If I'm going to do it, I want to do my best. Or if not, I'm just not going to do it at all. So I want to do my best. Strive for excellence. Homer Lindsay's in heaven now. But let me tell you something about Homer Lindsay. First Baptist Church, Jacksonville, Florida. He built that great church. God really used him. Homer Lindsay told me one time that when you decide what you're going to do, you will be making an investment to do it. He said, as a rule, if you can add 10% more, you can move from mediocre to excellence. Because you've already got most of the investment in it. Now, my wife is a pro on that. She would just say, so the guests are coming over and we're going to do this? And I said, yes. And she said, we're using the china. I'm thinking, you're washing the dishes. So, but she wants to do it right. She wants them leaving saying, now, I was really impressed with that. And that's just the way she rolls. So you're not satisfied with mediocrity. Hey, this will be good enough. No, don't work in that realm. You want to do your best. I've been greatly blessed in that I've had the opportunity to address Congress a couple of times. And it's kind of neat when you realize you never forget that you were a high school dropout, raised in a government project, raised by a single mom, no purpose, direction in life. At 19 and 20, all I want to do is be a professional pool player. So you never forget about where God found you. And by the way, don't ever forget what it was like to be lost, okay? So that really, really, really helps you. And so I speak for the House and the Senate regularly. And so when I go down, I know what it's like I have good eye contact, okay? That's good and bad. Sometimes you look out there and you think, they're not with me. And there's sometimes I'm preaching, I'm not with me. I mean, there's times I thought, this is boring. I mean, you didn't mean for it to be, but I don't know if any of you that speak, you ever prepared something and it didn't go the way you thought it would? You thought it was going to be really a great message. And when you got into it, it was like it would taxi, but it wouldn't take off. There's been times I've preached and I've thought to myself, I'll be glad when I'm through. And you can't quit. Wouldn't that be cool? Think of that as to be able to quit in a sermon. Hey, time out, folks. I know I'm just 10 minutes in. This thing is going nowhere. See you next Sunday. If I ever did, I'm going to record it and send it to everyone that's ever heard me. I've always wanted to do that. It's kind of like taking a potty break while you're preaching. Hold on just a minute. Everybody else gets up and goes out, I'll be right back. I'm going with that gentleman. All right, okay. Like the women, we like to go together. All right. So you really become creative at getting things done well, no matter what. You really do. You just, it's not. I tell our staff sometime, and I tell this to preachers, don't go around and talk about how hard this week was unless you'll balance it out about how easy some of the other weeks were. I'm not going to stand up and say, I'll tell you what, I had to kill myself this week. Didn't get my days off. I had 2 funerals and a wedding and a good 78 hours this week. Well, how about the week that you went to the dentist during the regular day and got your hair cut and played golf that afternoon? And, so it balances out. There's going to be tough weeks. You really have a whatever it takes attitude. It isn't overcome. You're just not overcome by obstacles. You just press through. They're going to come. You accept responsibility. Being a leader and having a large staff, I delegate a lot. My wife will tell you this. Somebody says, if my wife's there, you were to come up and say, Pastor Johnny, I admire you. I don't know how you get all these things done. My wife says, gets things done. You don't know very much about my husband. He goes in and tells everybody what to do. And I said, that's a gift, delegation. And that really is. Some people won't delegate it. Some people say, you want it done right, do it yourself. You won't get much done in life if that's all you do is what your fingerprints can push. So you got to do the others. But sometimes, and I taught a lesson, I think, up here from Exodus 18 on Moses being a leader. Moses is told by his father-in-law, Jethro, in Exodus chapter 18, verse 19 and following, he said, let the people handle the smaller matters, but you and you alone handle the great matters. You better learn what great matters God intended you to never take your fingerprints off of. And if not, somebody will lead something and it will go wrong and it's on your charge and you're responsible because you delegated it and you should have done it yourself. I can look back, and I'm just going to simply say it and move, on a major issue I delegated. I had no right delegating it. It did not go the way I wish it should have gone, and it's my fault. And when they got into it, God deeply convicted me, and I went to him, but not with enough energy. And I said, I think we need to go ahead at this point and do it this way now. And they talked me into it. And the reason is I was tired. So I didn't put up the resistance I should have. If you were to bring it to me today, the way I feel right now, I would push through and say, did you hear me? Do it. But I didn't, and I have to live with it. Okay. No, I'm not going to tell you what it is. All right, accept Responsibility. You accept responsibility. Doesn't make excuses or shift blame. Now, I don't know any other way to say it. As a leader, if you want something bad enough, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. And the difference in leaders and managers is leaders find a way, managers find excuses. I was going to do that, but if I'd have waited to go to college when I could afford it, I would still be a high school dropout. But I just trusted God for one semester. I went to school with the promise of one semester. But I really felt God wanted me to go. So let me give you a statement. And if you want to follow it up, you can follow it in 1 Kings 17. Or if you'll go to woodstockchurch.tv, you can go to a series called 10. You'll see it on there, 10. Hit 10 and then look at the message, Are You There? On 1 Kings 17. And here's what I find 2 times in the scripture. When God issues a call, God issues a command. What do you mean by that? Listen carefully. Elijah, go hide thyself at the brook Cherith, and I will send birds from heaven to feed you. He issued a call, and he issued a command. You go, God's call. I'll provide, God's promise. Then, when he was through with him there, he said, leave Cherith and go to Zarephath, and there will be a widow woman waiting to provide for you. If I'd wrote the Bible, I wouldn't have said it that way. I'd have said, go over to Zarephath, and I've got a millionaire waiting on you. But instead, God just wanting to show you how he works within the context, not of conventional wisdom, where most churches are led. Well, Pastor, I know you said you fasted and prayed and that God's leading us to do this, and you feel he's giving you peace and giving you a word from God, and you've talked about how to bring God to glory. But I graduated at Georgia Tech. I believe the Lord gave me, no, he gave you conventional wisdom, dude, if it didn't come from heaven. So sit down. Now, you don't say that's what you want to say, okay? Doesn't that sound cool, though? I like to think through what I'd like to say. But so what that's done is put it down. It's the same hand that is raised in worship to how awesome he is on Sunday and raised on Wednesday night to vote against the advancement of his kingdom. That's all right, you're welcome. In the South. I don't know if they do it in the North there. It's the South. Okay, so you make excuses or you find a way. Passionate people believe in people. I told you that a moment ago. You got to believe in people. You really do. You got to believe in them. You got all kinds of different people. You got to believe in them. And if you'll believe in them and love them, I'm telling you, God will show you something about them. This morning early, I got so many ways to contact you. You know that? So many ways to be contacted. So I'm on all the social networks. I post a good bit. So here, Facebook Messenger this morning. First name's Regina. She's really different. Different personality. And she said, here's what it said. Pastor Johnny, pray for my uncle. He's really sick. And so I bowed my head and said, God, I pray for Regina's uncle. In the name of Jesus, I don't know him. I know you do with your ministry. Hey, Regina, thanks for reaching out. I just prayed for him. Hope you have a Christ-filled day. Pastor Johnny, what would you say at the end of the day after you wrote that? That is one of the most faithful women to our church. You believe in people. Some of them are weird. That people think I'm weird. I think they're very perceptive. I mean, I really do. I think there's some strange ways about me. All right, here's what passionate people do. They inspire others to do their best. I'm in a campaign of raising a lot of money, and I'm getting my share of emails where they're being critical of me. And they're talking to other people and being critical of me. But then I've got other men that are writing me and they're saying, I praise God for a pastor that's never been satisfied with the status quo. Thank you for challenging me to never coast, but to keep pedaling. So you know what I do? I choose to thank God for that possibility. You know which one I'll share Sunday? Somewhere in the message, I'll pull my phone out, and I won't say who, but I said one of my great guys that he's really faithful to God wrote me the other day, and this is why I do what I do. Here's what he said about this campaign we're in. And I'll share it, and I'll say, that's what I love about all of y'all. That's what I love about this church is how you're so affirming and you embrace this vision. And then that guy will begin to think, good Lord, I must be the only negative one in here. Now, what you could do is get up and say, I know a lot of you don't like this, but you're going to wish at the king, at the throne of God one day, you'd have really got with it. But I think that, but I'd go with the other. So inspiring to do the best. And passionate people rise to leadership. Now, let me give you 6 truths about passion. 6 truths about passion. Number 1, passion is the first step to achievement. I'm just telling you, if it don't fire my soul, it'll be easy for it to fizzle before I finish. So, desire determines destiny. If you find yourself lacking in persistence, this weakness may be remedied by building a stronger fire under your desire. In 2 Timothy chapter 1, verses 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, that's the context where Paul, who's getting ready to have his head removed, he is instilling within the successor of his ministry, Timothy, who will later lead in that major city of Ephesus, where Paul has spent 3 years. He is saying to him, fan the flame of passion in your soul to a full blaze. And he said, because it has the potential of going out. And he says in chapter 1 and verse 14 of 1 Timothy, don't neglect the gift that is in you. So it was Mid-America Seminary, the first time I ever preached. Roy Beeman was there. Scared me to death. I was in my 30s preaching for the first time in a seminary. And I was thinking, oh my God, everybody here is so smart. And so Gray Allison, before he introduced me, said, I want you to meet somebody. Come here, Dr. Beeman. And here's what he said. I'll never forget as long as I live. I didn't plan to share this story. I can't believe I'm getting to share it at one of the campuses for Mid-America. He said, this is Dr. Beeman. Dr. Beeman taught Adrian Rogers Greek. I was like, oh, God, I could have lived the rest of my life without knowing that. Why would you tell me that now before I'm about to preach? He said, and he also taught Gray Allison Greek. I said, wow. I said, okay. He said, and while you teach this morning, he'll follow along the Greek New Testament. I mean, I was not even confident to use agape that day. I mean, you've never heard me say this. God help me. All right, you know what I mean? I mean, I preached that day and God helped me. I mean, I remember what I preached. I remembered I didn't sleep any the night before I preached. I was so tensed, but I was honored but tensed. And so I preached. And students came, we connected. We've known through time. And then Roy Beeman was near the back of the line. It's kind of scary what he was going to say. So he came, and I'll just say this. Dr. Beeman, Roy Beeman, gave me one of the highest compliments a preacher could ever receive. And by the way, you may just say, oh, brag on it. No, you don't know. Remember, the background I came out of, what you don't know is I had real low self-esteem, which works real close within the context of insecurities. Okay? So I needed it. Let me just write this down for you. Anybody God ever uses is going to need all the encouragement anybody will ever give them. So just make note of that. And so while he was standing there, some students came up and said, hey, Dr. Beeman, didn't Johnny Hunt light your fire? I'll never forget this. I've been telling it for all those years. He said, no, boys, no. And it was like something like this. I don't get the years right. 56 years ago, Jesus lit the fire. But God used him to fan it. And I walked away with this statement that day. I do not have the potential to light a fire in your heart. Only Jesus can light a fire in your heart. But a preacher of encouragement can fan the flame. So the fire's already there, but it might have been burning low. And so I would hope in this day of encouragement, leadership, that you would leave here and God would just fan your flame. I like it when somebody says, hey, I'm glad I came for today, but I'll be glad when you're through because I'm ready to get back to my field because I am fired up about what I can be used by God to do in that community. So passion's the first step. Question, how do you feed your passion? When I sensed that God wanted me to be a pastor or preacher, I made my mind up that I wanted to be the best. So I was inspired by other stories, and I began to think God can do it here. I read in the Bible where God is not a God of partiality, that God is no respecter of persons. When I say God will do it for them, it means God will do it for me. I have not wanted to live my life in the shadows of reading the history of what other great men did. I would like to be part of that story. I even wrote a series one time that the reason, and it was a series of sermons entitled Refusing to Leave the World the Way I Found It. And I based it, predicated on Thessalonians. The Bible says that the message that God had done to them had been trumpeted all over the region. Even where you've not been, they're hearing about you over there. I was at Southeastern Seminary. We had a professor to come from Southwestern Seminary, and he preached, and then they opened it up for question and answers. And someone asked him, what do you think the major differences in Southeastern and Southwestern is? And he said this: Southwestern, we're making history. Southeastern, y'all reading it. I made my mind up then, by the grace of God, I'm going to join the making it. And by the way, history, his story. We started a church in Burbank, California. It's the fastest growing Southern Baptist church in Southern California. It'll be 2 years old in February. Their first year, they were averaging 275. It's a hard area. It is Burbank, California, where they write the storylines for the movies. And the name of our church is Story City Church. And so we're there to tell his story, because we think it's the greatest story. To give you some, just as practical. It's been a few years ago, I went to the bookstore and bought a dozen to start with, Baker book series of great lives. I bought Spurgeon, I bought D.L. Moody, I bought Amy Carmichael, I bought George Mueller, I bought Billy Sunday. And so what I would do is in the morning when I get up, and I give plenty of time to the Lord, because I was challenged to have an unhurried quiet time. What if I were to date my wife and say, so glad to be with you, babe, let's get this over with. I've got some work to get to. I'm going to tell you what my wife would say after she kicked me in the shin. Go now. So I've always believed whenever you're there, be all there. So I want to have an unhurried quiet time. So what I do some reading for personal edification. So I would read, it's about 15, 18 minutes of just one chapter of the life of Moody or Spurgeon or one of these, Billy Sunday. And I read the characteristics of what it was about them. Mueller would never tell people his needs. And by the way, I'm not Mueller. I'm not. I'm really not. I tell people needs all the time. But he would just tell God. But I'm so inspired by his stories. Just never been motivated to try to get there. I mean, really, he would sit at the table, and there would be 100 orphans, and they would sit down, and he'd say, "Let us pray." And there was nothing in front of them to eat. And he'd say, "Oh God, these are your children, not mine, and they're hungry. So we want to thank you for whatever provision you are bringing." And they'd say sometime before he'd finish his prayer, there'd be a knock on the door, and they'd say, "Sir, I hate to bother you, but we've got a major problem. Our milk truck broke down, and that milk is going to spoil. Can you use it?" And then I guess they'd sing all four stanzas of "What a Friend We Have in Jesus." Okay. I got to thinking, at my first church, I was after the lost. Second church, I was building the Sunday school. Third church, I was out knocking on doors. Fourth church, I wanted to touch the town, neighbors, and nations. Number 2, passion increases willpower. The key to willpower is want power. I really want to do the will of God. So people who want something badly enough can usually find the willpower to achieve it. Some people are working themselves to death to make more money. And not, a lot of times they'll tell you they didn't really have much life with it. And some of them were in ministry. And I could name some great names that if you've not read the history of their lives, that died even in recent days. It didn't end real well. Passion changes lives. Passion actually changes lives. I love to read about these who died so young. I had the opportunity to be in Cairo, Egypt a couple of years ago. And while I was there, I didn't know this about history. And they said, hey, are you a big Oswald Chambers fan? I said, I'm a big fan. Are you kidding? I've been reading for 25 years. Somebody said, how could you read the same devotion for 25 years? Still trying to figure out what he was saying. But I mean, but there's part of that that is humorous, but it's that deep. You know what I mean? It's just, it really is, it's pretty deep. So I love reading. It's the number one devotional in the world. I don't know if you knew that or not. Not most precise. Read it this morning. Read it almost, very few mornings in 25 years. I missed it. So I said, yeah, I loved it. And they said, well, and I was traveling with videographers and writers, and I wrote a book, How to Get Connected to the Nations, for the International Mission Board while I was there. So that we go out to the cemetery. We're in a very poor community of Cairo, 25 million people. And we went into this big brick wall, and it was a big military cemetery, and inside it was groomed. It was incredible if you've ever been there. And they walked me over, and he died at 43 years of age. And by the way, he didn't write a devotional book. His wife took those lessons she heard him teach students and military and did a compilation, and not most for his eyes. So here's what happened. I'm telling all this, but I hope it'll inspire you. So I'm there. I was president of our denomination, and so I'm standing there, and I'm looking down on that white marker. There it is. Wow, Oswald Chambers. Wow. I think it was 1917 when he died. And I'm reflecting, and I'm really getting emotional, thinking about, man, the influence of this man just in 43 years. And I forget that anybody's with me, and the video camera's going. So they whisper, Pastor Johnny, tell us what you're thinking. And I could hardly talk for tears. So I read his biography. Read the biography of these great men. Did you know there's some people that were living on the streets? But one of my friends was living on the streets, lived under a bridge on Orange Beach. His father was killed in a car accident. His mother died with an illness. And he's 19 years old, living on the street. And a man came along. He calls him now, because he never got his name, calls him Jones. And he says, son, I don't know what happened in your life for you to get here, but I'm going to give you a library card, and you ain't got anything else to do. Go check out books at the library on biographies of great lives. And after a while, he thought, well, I got nothing else to do, so he did. And after a few years, Andy Andrews read his 200th book. Today, he's one of the most sought-after leadership speakers in the world. The last 4 or 5 presidents have had him to come and speak to their cabinets. He travels all over. We're personal friends. We just became buddies out there. He's a nut, is what he is. But where you would give somebody credit for something, he will research it and say, yeah, that person was famous for that, but I researched it and found out who inspired them. So maybe we ought to give this person credit. Then he says, no. I found out who inspired them. And he traces it back as far as he can. Give you a number 1 book that he wrote. And if you read it and you don't read the rest of his, I'm shocked. Traveler's Gift. Here's what he did that really led him to be famous. You got to hear this. I can't believe it. It's still part of fashion. Here it is. When he wrote Traveler's Gift, somebody asked me about publishing a moment ago. He was turned down by 27 publishing companies. But he didn't quit. He felt he had something. What did he have in the Traveler's Gift? He noticed after reading 200 biographies of great men and women, he in his mind composed 7 things that was true about every one of them. So what he does, he uses this incredible imagination after doing that reading. And so what he does, he's the traveler. And he goes back in time, and he's with Abraham Lincoln. And he asks Abraham Lincoln the question that leads him to talk about that character trait, and he talks about it. He just finished his latest book entitled The Little Things. He wrote a book entitled 7 Choices that'll change your life. He wrote, I've never heard anybody do this, he wrote on the difference in perception and perspective. Everybody perceives, but not everybody understands perspective. You're going to get all these notes, so I'm on a roll. Have you ever thought about the difference in perception and perspective? Listen to this research. Facts. Can you tell me the busiest day for fast food in America? What day? No, it's a day of the week. Anybody else? Anybody else? Sunday. Sunday's the busiest day for fast food in the United States. Facts, okay? Facts. Research is out there. Lead you to research. McDonald's employs more people on Sunday than any day of the week. Thought I'd tell you that in case you need a job. McDonald's, unlike Wendy's and all the others, and there's many of them, average $1.5 million a year per store. But not McDonald's. $2 million. Yes, sir. But there's a fellow in my town. It's in heaven now. His name's Truett Cathy, personal friend. Bubba and Dan are friends. Started a little chicken company called Chick-fil-A. But he's got a different perspective. Perception says, open on Sunday if you're going to make it in fast food. And I'll guarantee only God knows how many Christian businessmen open their business on the Lord's Day because perception. But what if the Bible changes your perspective? Oh, this is getting good. Really, I mean, does the Bible change your perspective? I led Ted Turner's girlfriend to the Lord, and she used to lead the rallies on pro-choice. She is now leading the rallies in pro-life. God changed her perspective. The Word of God changed her perspective. I love the Bible. The Word of God can change a person. Things you used to love, you start hating. Things you hated, you fall in love with loving them. It's God's perspective. Isn't that a biblical world vision? So, he says, I would like for all my employees, if they want to have an opportunity to go to church. Have y'all heard about the new stadium we just built in Atlanta? The Mercedes-Benz. Have you heard? Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Guess who's in there? Chick-fil-A. Guess when 80% of the games are going to be played? And they're not open. There you go for the airport on Sunday. They're not open. Have you been to the Atlanta airport, the busiest airport in the world? Not the largest, the busiest in the world. Has been for the last decade. They're closed. What's wrong with his perception? It's been overshadowed by his perspective. Oh, and just by, thought maybe you'd want to know. They make $2.4 million for each store. They do better than McDonald's. They do better than Wendy's and Hardee's and Popeye's Chicken. Can I get a witness? I'm getting hungry again. Name it about it. So I'm just trying to tell you what's happening. You know why the average person doesn't tithe? Perception says, if I give 1/10, I've got less. Perspective says, I give to God, and God multiplies what I've got, opens the windows of heaven, and supplies our needs. So the reason our people aren't being obedient? Perception. And the average Christian perceives like the rest of the world. Marriage don't work out? Get another one. Perception. Perspective. God hates divorce. What does Moses say? They divorced because of the hardness of human hearts. Is that what you want to be known as, a hard-hearted person? And if you have divorce, repent and let God restore you. He can. But don't make light of it. Man, I'm on a roll here. And by the way, if you don't like these last things, I'm getting ready to head back to Atlanta, okay? So that's, another person I studied their life. Bet you've studied their life. We used to have to study these guys in 20 centuries of great preaching. Robert Murray McCheyne. Was it 27 or 29? I get confused every now and then. He died in his late 20s. But they say that God really just changed Scotland under his. He said he was praying one time and he said, oh God, give me Scotland or I'll die. And he said, God said, die and I'll give you Scotland. And he said, I even died to the ambition of wanting to see the country come. So they say to this day, and I just read this, they say to this day, you can travel to the Scots town to where Robert Murray McCheyne pastored. And you can actually go in, and there's a sexton that will show you around the pulpit, the furniture, and all that Robert Murray McCheyne spoke out of. They say one guy went in recently and said, so, sir, you've been here all these years, you know so much about Robert Murray McCheyne. Why would you say God used him so mightily as such a young man? And they say, without fail, he'll take you to a chair in his study. And he would say, sit in this chair. Now, open your Bible. Bury your face in the Bible. And weep before God. That is the way he always started before he preached. There's some secrets to these men. Divine secrets, how God used them. Number 4, passion changes me. See, a passion for souls will change your priority. If you were to ever read the first book I ever wrote, and it's out of print as of now, I quit it this year. So really a lot of them. It's entitled The Building of a Spiritual Resume. And I wrote it from this perspective. Just as much you have a resume in your company, I have a resume with Christ. I came to Jesus and I struggled and this happened and that happened and walked. And then God continued. And here's, as of today, this is my resume. And so God really used that book. I tell in there how my mother was a waitress. She worked in the factory in the daytime. Century Meals. And then she'd come home, fix 6 children their meal. And I can still picture this in my mind. I can see her walking down Front Street. This is unbelievable. You don't think of this today compared. She walked about 2 miles to the White Front Grill where my mom waited tables. I am a very generous tipper, regardless of the service. Because if I only tip when I get good service, I'm like the Pharisees. I'm just fair, you see. So what I do, I need to tip not based on service rendered, but relationship to Jesus Christ. He was generous to me. When he was rich, he became poor, so that me, through his poverty, might be made rich. So when I'm not getting good service, instead of getting ticked off, here's what I do. I see my mama. Wonder how many youngins she's got at home because dad checked out. That's why she's working maybe. So I wonder how I can bless her. So, hey, ma'am, Donna, is that right? Yeah. Hey, Donna, boy, it seems like you really got a lot on your mind today. And sometimes they'll tell you, sometimes they won't. And I'll say, my wife and I were just noticing, and my mom was a waiter, and we appreciate what you do. Is there anything I can pray for you about? Any need that you have I can ask God to supply? I did that the other day, and the lady ran from the table crying. And somebody thought, well, that's not working too good for you. And I didn't know how to interpret it. About 5 minutes later, she came back. She says, sir, you have no way of knowing. 1 year ago to the day, I buried my daddy. He's my best friend. And boy, today's first anniversary of him being gone. I am so missing him. And you have so encouraged me. I felt like when you said, can I pray for you, that it was God's way of saying, I know your pain. She says, sir, I've got to ask. Sir, are you an angel? My wife said, no way, no. Just exactly how it happened. And we prayed. Asked a guy at Chili's the other day, I said, can I pray for you? And he said, started crying. There's going to be a story behind it when you're really touched. He said, I served as a student pastor and I made some bad choices. And I've been restored. And I have a church voting on me this Sunday. He said, boy, if you'd pray. And then we leave a really generous tip. When I go into Longhorns and Town Lake, they fight over me sitting at their table. I was with a man one time, and his coffee had gotten cold, and he goes, I want a woman that's on some coffee, good little some coffee on. She'd curl back. So, and he said, I know how I'll get her, and he put the coffee cup on top of his head. I came that close to knocking it off, but he was too big. I didn't want he'll knock me out, so I didn't do it. But anyway, all right, my time's up. Let me just give you the rest of this. A passion for growth will change your methods. A passion for pastors will change your ministry. A passion for discipling will change your goals. Hey, let me tell you how I do a lot. I choose, as I get, I hope, wiser, to rearrange my priorities. Like I do 3 morning services, but here's how I do them. I preach at 9:30 in a big worship center with a choir and orchestra, simulcast it next door to a contemporary service. So they've got a live pastor and everything, and then we've got them synchronized, and so I come on in there. And then I go in that room for 11 o'clock, and it's overflow, and that's why we have to do the other. So I do those. So at 8 o'clock, I used to go to Bible study. This is weird. I've been in Sunday school my whole ministry. I love Bible study. That's why we're a very large number of our worship attendants attend Sunday school. We got one of the strongest Sunday schools in Southern Baptist life. I tell our people, if you're only going to give 1 hour on Sunday, go to Sunday school, because the average person that comes to your worship center and doesn't get connected, stay a year average. If they get in a small group, they'll stay 5 to 7. So that makes sense to me. So I say, just go to one, go to connect, get to know the people. That's what keeps them in there. And all. So I've been doing that, but then I thought I want to disciple men. I want to lead a discipleship movement in our church, and I want it to be sort of natural, not like a program that I'm pushing. And so what I do, I find myself sharing what I've learned in the group. And the key word in discipleship is to make it replicable. I'm not going to be there Sunday. I'm going to be in Montreal, Lord willing. So what I'm going to do is I've already called Johnny from Alaska that moved down, that got right with God in our church. He's going to teach it. Well, we're in week number 40. They were guys doing it week number 8, because I follow a little pattern. And I'm going to give you my email address. And if you want it, I'll send it to you. It's a 23-page document of what I do, exactly what I do. I do the exact same thing every time. And I do it in 1 hour. Is that enough time? No. Well, why don't you give more time? I'd rather them leave wanting more than to bore them with a little extra time. They want to go 2 years. No, we'll go 1 year. Why? Because they need to get out of the boat and start doing what I taught them to do. And I get them to sign a contract and make a commitment. I'll show you the contract before they get in, that they will do with others what I did for them, because I don't want to be with a bunch of consumers. Passion makes impossibilities possible. All right, so you're going to get all that, right? Okay, it's coming to y'all, so you're going to have it there. All right, here's my email address, all right, if you want it. And so I read them all, answer them. Now, what you'll see me do a lot of times, I'll say, you'll see me add somebody's name on CC, and I will say, hey, great to be with you today. Donna will send you that. Dallas will send you that. JJ will send you that. Now, if you want to know an issue of some of the subjects I've dealt with in leadership, let me tell you one lesson. One of the most popular I ever wrote was The Insecure Leader. Somebody asked me about it. I taught here last year on I wrote about a 22-page lesson on the stewardship of influence. How do you steward your life? Somebody wrote me this week and said, aren't you friends with the owners of the Museum of the Bible? And I am. Steve and Dave Green are personal friends. And so they said, would you be so kind to give me their email address so I can write and see if I could get a private tour? Absolutely not. Violating my influence. You send me what you have, and I'll send it to them. My son is trying to get in security in the government. He would really like to work for Sonny Perdue. Well, who wouldn't? And would you give me his absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. God's given me that relationship with him. You send it to me, and I'll send it. I'm violating that. It's like if I ever gave someone my personal number, I never give you the right to give my personal number to somebody else. And the reason I have to have a personal number is a lot of people that I need to talk to keeps my number that shouldn't keep it. All right. It's called stewardship. Because you can't pastor the whole world. I tried to and ended up in the hospital. So we're going to do it. So here it is. Johnny, Johnnny, Johnny dot Hunt, Hunt, at FBCW. So remember, First Baptist Church, Woodstock, FBCW.net. So I'll get that, I'll read it, and I'll try to send you a resource. I wrote a lesson on how to use an assistant. So here's the thing. This is just, this isn't thrown off on a seminary for any namesake. But, a lot of times you're learning theology, you're learning history, and you're learning leadership and practical stuff and all. But, I when I was in seminary, they never taught you, like, how to develop staff. All right, so listen to this. I bring a minister of music in, and my church is already kind of large. He's got a staff, but he's never had one. So should I just assume, just because he's seminary trained, that he's been in ministry for 10 years, he knows how to now work with a staff, but he came from a church running 200? No. So he comes in, and he's used to doing everything himself on his laptop while I've got a secretary out here making X number of dollars a year, and he don't know how to use her. And so what I've got is good men in here doing a lot of stuff that I really have someone else that I'm paying to do that. So the person who serves my office needs to be called by God to serve me, because I got some weird things I need them to do. I mean, like, hey, I've got a meeting at 7 o'clock on Sunday morning. I don't even have to ask Donna. You'll see stuff from Donna if you send it to me. She does it. Sometimes I just show up at a meeting and she's there, and I say, what are you doing here? And she says, well, I knew you were speaking. I want to make sure, I came just to make sure you didn't need anything. She's called by God. Her husband knows she's called by God. And I make her feel like she's called by God. I treat her like she's called by God. And so but how to use them. So it helps me to get more done. These guys that I'm mentoring, I work the fire out of them. I mean, I do. They're not just going to sit around and just learn and soak. I'm going to let them serve. I mean, really, so do this, do that. And if you can't get them to do the menial task, they'll never do the other stuff. I've got one that's a great preacher that's with me, young African-American named J.J. Washington that played for the Wolfpack. And I mean, has one of the running times there on the football field. He was fast as get out and thing. He aggravates the stuff out of me. He eats everything and skinny as a rail. I do not like him, but I'll be glad when he's through with me. No, but anyway, JJ, he can preach the stars down. But what do you look for, Pastor Johnny, as a mentor to these guys? What do you look for? Hey, JJ, just got a call from Mid-America Seminary, and we're short about 60 people on books. I need you to go up to the book room and get this book, that book, and that book. Yes, sir. And he does it with the same energy that he preaches on Sunday. That's a great leader right there. There's things I don't have to do as a leader because I've got so many people around me. But I don't think you'll ever hear me say what I won't do. I still do hospital visits, and that's scary. When I go to the hospital, they think, oh, my God, is it this bad? They've sent you in. And they think sometimes the reason they sent me is to give them the bad news. I mean, so it's different. But I just love serving ministry. So if I can help you with some discipleship, may not have written on it, but I've been writing lessons for 24 years. So at least 3 a year for 24 years. So if you just say, have you written anything on this? Logan Carson taught me Old Testament survey at Gardner Webb College when I was 23. He's just recently retired from Southeastern Seminary. When I went over to Southeastern, I go and teach a day of leadership to the whole student body. And when I was there, he liked what I did. And he said, I would like to purchase all of that material. I said, oh my God, one of my professors wanting my material? Are you kidding? I'll pay you if you'll let me tell people you requested it. And he did. He sent me $50 and I tore the check up. I mean, he tried to pay me for it. What an honor. I mean, if you live long enough, and God help you to be faithful, if you live long enough, you can become a hero to your heroes. Isn't that incredible? Did you hear what I just said? I mean, the men that I looked up to are trying to find time with me, and I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding me. And what you know, the whole privilege of what I just said? What a joy to serve. What a privilege to give back. I mean, they've invested in you, and now you get a chance to invest in them. You mean Adrian Rogers, before he died, would call to ask me how I do my leadership material and how I structure my Timothy Barnabas? Because some of you know that he did too before he died. His dream was, I can hear him say it now, I have 50 years of ministry, 74 years old, I have 50 years of ministry. I want to spend the rest of my life developing the generation coming behind me. He did too, and then went to be with the Lord. But he would call and ask. So anyway, so that was it. So here it is. Gotta quit. I'm trying to quit. I just can't. I got to can't help it. So I've enjoyed being with y'all. And whether you liked it or not, y'all acted like y'all had a good time. So, and I don't know if that's just a thing up north. You know, you can do it. But thank you. And if there's other resources I've got, I never charge you for them. And somebody says, well, why not? And I think, ain't nobody going to buy my stuff. But no, I sell it to others, you know, so, and do it. And a lot of people help me. So, but if I can help you with anything. And someone asked me, and it was very kind of you, said, my mother would love to have those books. I said, take them to her. So I don't want to take those back. So if you've got someone you want to give them to, they may all be gone. But if they're not, matter of fact, not only do I not want to take them back, I'm not taking them back. You can't make me. So but you can pass them on. If you know a friend, that'd be the only thing I'd ask, if you know a friend. Now, you do not have my permission to sell them. All right? And if you do, I'll see you at the judgment seat of Christ. No. But thank you for having me. Mr. Director Mike Haggard, thank you for allowing me to come. It's been a privilege to be with you. Thanks.